I actually expected more people because I thought this was the most exciting track. I hope colleagues will be joining us as we go on. I truly consider this track to be one of the strategic ones, the most exciting ones. And we also have a great panelists in front of us, and I'm going to briefly introduce them and their organizations, and to get straight into the discussions. So for this particular session, we are going to be exploring, I think I briefly discussed this before we went for tea break, but one of the prerequisites for robust internet development across the world in countries, locally or even regionally, is enabling policy framework or policy environment. And we think that a conducive policy environment can actually grow the ecosystem much better and in a positive direction. And in this particular session, we want to explore ways of going beyond working in silos and how to truly become multidisciplinary in terms of the way we interact with stakeholders, different stakeholders, the way we shape our ecosystem, the internet ecosystem in Ethiopia, the way we interact with the policy, the way we also contribute to that policy, to those policy processes. And some of the issues that we suggested with the panelists, maybe just exploring a bit of ideas on capacity building, how to enable a legal and policy regulatory framework, and also building local institutions. So I'm hoping that by the end of this session, we at least 3 to 4 ideas or recommendations that we can push forward to our community, and also maybe some ideas of how we can implement such ideas. So with me to start this discussion, I've got Malcolm Hutty. Malcolm works for LINX, which is the London Internet Exchange point. Mark role involves liaising with government and regulatory authorities on behalf of LINX membership, representing the interests of members to government and briefing members on regulatory developments. He also acts on regulatory affairs as a spokesperson for the Euro IX, and since between 2008 and 2013, he served as the president of Euro ISPA. So welcome, Malcolm, with us. Next to Malcolm is Alice. Some of you already know Alice. Alice is one of a prominent figure in the Kenyan internet space. And Alice is currently the policy advisor for Africa with Mozilla Foundation. With Mozilla, not Mozilla Foundation, right? Just Mozilla. Mozilla Corporation. She is currently working on privacy, data protection, digital ID, and taxation. She's a member of the board of Kenyan Communication Regulatory Authority. She also led African government engagement with the African Union Commission, the famous .org Africa initiative. Alice also worked represented the Kenyan government at the AUC, the African Union Commission, and ICANN, Government Advisory Committee. And She also serves as the Vice President for the Chair of the GAC Public Safety Working Group. She also is the founder of KICTANET, or the Kenyan ICT Action Network, and has also assumed some roles with Internet Society, especially in the Board of Trustees. So welcome, Alice. And last but not least, Messi Ndegwa is the head of public policy at Facebook, covering East and the Horn of Africa. She's a seasoned professional with over 15 years experience in technology industry, specifically tech policy and regulation. Prior to joining Facebook, Messi had several senior management positions at Safaricom, GSM associations, where her roles included public policy advisory and advocacy, competition management, regulatory affairs, and digital inclusion, online safety. Within the East and wider Sub-Saharan Africa region. She also is a board member of East African Commission Organization, where she held the position of chair for the Telecoms Assembly. So please welcome Messi. Did I introduce myself? I don't think I did. So my name is Verengai Mabika. I come from Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe is the best country after Ethiopia. So I'm a senior policy advisor with Internet Society, and I'll be your moderator today for this particular session. So again, to re-emphasize the point why we are having this discussion is that the intention is for us to be able to air our views. Our voices should be heard in this conference. I think most importantly, we cannot just leave this conference without airing our contributions. And this panel certainly help us to shape the priorities or the issues that we should frame within the governance track. Okay, so I'll hand over the floor to Malcolm first to just briefly talk about the organization and also just get us into the discussion.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for the invitation here. It's a real pleasure to be here at what I think sounds like it must be a very special moment for Ethiopia, the moment when there is the possibility of opening the internet market and the internet economy in Ethiopia, moving from a point of monopoly to a point where there is a more broadly based and developed internet economy. There's so much in the future here, and I think it's very exciting to be in here at the beginning of it. LINX is an internet exchange point, and it's a membership association for the internet network operators in the United Kingdom and really from around the world now. We've got a long history, and we're quite big now as internet exchange points go. And we got some circumstances that are going to be very different to the local circumstances here. I don't know much about here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the experiences that we've had and the choices that were made by us and by the United Kingdom government in the governance sphere that has led to our growth and success. And not really to tell anyone that this is what you should do, but instead to say this was our experience and how we believed that choices were connected with outcomes. And so that you can then understand what you will from that and apply it as you will and as you think best to your local environment. So first, in terms of what LINX is, we were founded in 1994, so we're 25 years old. And we're a membership organization, so we're owned and controlled by the network operators that participate in the internet exchange. We initially had 7 member networks. We operate on a one member, one vote basis. And when we were started, the basic idea, the basic reason for creating LINX was there was a problem. There were a couple of problems, but there was one big problem. Keeping local traffic local. Because to pass internet traffic from one internet provider to another across London It went via New York. And that was incredibly expensive. And listening to the presentations yesterday, where I heard about traffic from one part of South Africa to another part of South Africa going via London, I saw some parallels there. I'll leave you to decide how applicable these things are, but we found that in order to stop traffic going needlessly via New York with all that expense and delay and loss of quality of service, and to give the network operators in the UK more control over the traffic, found an internet exchange where traffic can pass directly. That was the solution. And they also wanted, there were 7 of them at the time, as I said, and they wanted to avoid reinforcing the dominance of the one big, what had formerly been the monopoly provider, BT. And they didn't want to create a new monopoly with somebody else, because whoever ran this internet exchange would be in control of all internet traffic, and they would be the new dominant monopoly operator that everybody would be dependent on for the new internet era. They wanted to avoid that too. So they created LINX as a membership organization that everybody would own, that all the operators would own equally, that would operate independently of them, but they would have joint control to ensure that it didn't prefer any one of them. So in a sense, LINX was more than just a piece of technical infrastructure. It was also a mechanism for solving economic and competition issues. Just to show you where we got to now, quickly, this is my boast slide. This is to say how big we are and how successful it's been. And we have to say this just to get it out of the way, but so you get some idea. We've got 843 member networks now from 81 countries, starting from a position of 7 network operators, all from the UK. We've got aggregate peak traffic now across our internet exchanges of 4.5 terabits per second. And connected capacity, that's adding up the ports of all our members and how much they could pass at peak, 31.6 terabits per second. They're big numbers. They're big numbers by any standards. They're amongst the largest internet exchanges in the world. Amsterdam, Germany, the Brazilian sort of multi-exchange system, and Japan up there on a similar and larger basis. But yeah, LINX is big. So in some ways, maybe our experience won't be so applicable. But talking about the history and where we started, maybe there will be some parallels there that will be useful to you. So, first of all, the policy environment, the regulatory policy environment that allowed this to happen. The government made some choices about how it would go about regulating the policy environment for telecoms and for the internet. And now we don't have the time, we're going to have a discussion, so I can't go into detail. So I'm just going to bring out 2 broad themes for which these themes underpinned what was done. And there were exceptions, and what I'm going to say is a simplification, but they are essentially the broad parameters within which policy was developed. The first one was it was intended to be permissive. That is to say, the government, it created an independent regulator in 2003, and did not tell the regulator, it is your job to regulate this market, generally. That wasn't the goal. It is not your job to decide what telecom should be. It is certainly not your job to decide what internet services there should be and how they should operate. That was not the job. The job was, you will let anyone come along. It's the market's job. It is the business's job to create services, and it is the market's job to create services, and it is your job to intervene where there are problems. That was the instruction given to the regulator. And so it was one of the things that government decided was that it would set itself, and it would set its independent regulator, a requirement that before it created regulation, it must identify a problem that that regulation was to address. It wasn't just to say how things should be. It had to say, this is a problem, and we are suggesting this rule, which is designed to address that problem, and we must be able to show a connection between the two. So things, and that's really quite a lot of forbearance there. If you think about what the goals might be, getting everyone broadband, how fast it should be, how quickly we should get it to everyone, what price it should be. These things were left to the market. And instead, the aim of policy was to ensure that a market functioned. So the government believed that a competitive, well-functioning, competitive market, business, would be able to solve these problems better than any government regulation could. But business on its own can't necessarily do that if the market is not working well. So the aim of regulatory policy was not to ensure the services, it was to ensure that there was a well-functioning market. That was the goal. And so the intervention was primarily aimed, if you hit the button again, intervention to identify any bottlenecks there might be and to remove them. So examples of what happened were, they said, for the existing incumbent operator, lease lines. You will have a monopoly over lease lines within the country. And new operators can't get started. So we will make you wholesale lease lines to other operators so that they can compete and have that. And that's the kind of intervention that did happen. But thinking again about something that was mentioned earlier, one of the things that was mentioned in one of the presentations this morning was, what about I think it was the railway company and the electricity company. They might be internet providers in Ethiopia in the future. How will we do that and what will the regulations be for that? That was the question that the gentleman posed on the slide, with no answers achieved yet, no decisions taken. What we said in the UK was there isn't going to be any regulation for that. If they want to, they can. Now that's not to say that there's no regulation. The regulator can come in and say, if you're going to do this, where there is a problem, we will tell you that you must do this and you must do that. But they didn't need permission. Nobody needed permission. And so you've got a variety of different things happening. Actually, in the UK, one of the major electricity companies became a big internet provider. Separately, the railway companies largely did not become internet providers. They ran a big network for their internal use, but leased out the space along their tracks to other network operators rather than trying to run a network themselves. The electricity company could have done that, but chose to become a network provider. Meanwhile, the water companies, some of them in some cities, started leasing out space within the sewers, again, to have high-capacity connections within cities where rights-of-way are difficult. And so you've got, instead of deciding that there should be, these companies should be a network provider, how can they actually function and connect to the internet and connect to each other in a way that works when there's actually really one operator that has all the international connectivity? That was a big question. And so LINX was created to help do that and to help allow connections between domestic operators and get international bandwidth on an equal basis. And we adopted some core values that we consider fundamental to the success and growth of an internet exchange, and certainly to our success and growth as an internet exchange. Certainly the intent to be excellence in quality and so forth, but mutuality. The network operators are members of the company. The regulator did not establish LINX. It could have done. It could have said there should be an internet exchange to solve this problem of dominance, but it didn't. It said, no, if the industry wants that, we will let them do it. We won't require there to be any license to be an IXP. They can start it if they want, and they did. And they started it on the basis that everyone is equal, and that we had the principle of neutrality, no favoritism. Whether you're a big operator or a small operator, you're offered business from LINX on the same terms. Everybody gets one vote in the openness, in the running of the company. Openness, not a closed club. Anyone wanting to run an internet provider that needs to join LINX is welcome. You don't have to get approved. And transparency. LINX, as part of its commitment to its members that it is a business for its members, we tell our members what's going on, and we tell them when we got faults, and we tell them when we got problems. Very high degree of transparency built in a way that you wouldn't necessarily get with a commercial company with its customers. These were the principles that we found really fundamental to the way we operate LINX in order to grow it into that sort of size that you see, and that promoted growth. That allowed people to come along and set up new networks because they could get the connectivity and they could pass on the basis of what wholesale rates were and not going through a bottleneck point. So we became that solution to a bottleneck point. One thing I'd say, and it's not on the slide here, the community element was very important as well. LINX runs member meetings on a quarterly basis. We have now about 150 members that show up. These have been very important over time for networking between people, for knowledge share, for development, for best practice and so forth. Now, nowadays, the UK is a very advanced digital economy, and LINX meetings are not in any way the centre of where you must be to learn about what's going on or to learn about technical development. It's just one of many things. But back in the 1990s when we were founded, it really was. An IXP can be the core of a community that starts things growing and starts people seeing that it is possible to build new things and meet with each other to learn how to do it and to have the practical ability to interconnect so that they can start new businesses. And an IXP and a member-based IXP can be really valuable in that sense in a new market, I think. And we certainly found that in the UK. It was very important in those days in that sense. Now it's more a technical conference and it's part of our governance system. And my final slide here is again on how LINX has operated. I spoke about those values, they're very important to us, but how do you ensure an organisation stays true to those values? How do you enforce that over time? 25 years, people change and ideas change and people say things are moved on. How do you ensure that an organisation that you set up and that sits at a position that is potentially a bottleneck in its own right really adheres to that public benefit purpose and maintains that neutrality? And our governance structure was designed to maintain that. So the membership control, ultimately one member, one vote, non-executive directors elected by the members, a single open contract, everybody on the same contract, and the core of that contract has to be approved by the membership as a whole. These were essentially the governance enforcement principles for the IXP that meant that those founding values that we were down to are ones which I can honestly say still run right through LINX from top to bottom to this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. This discussion is one example of how a local institution was developed and is further adding value to the ecosystem in London or in Britain or in the European space. And I think, again, for now, I would like you guys to pause if you have any questions for Malcolm. We are going to even explore further the discussion and unpick some of the issues that he has already presented on the process of the stakeholders who could be involved in such a process and how easy such a local institution could actually bring the value that we want to grow the internet ecosystem. I think I would turn to Messi. And Messi, you have some experience working in the African region, particularly in the Eastern and the Horn of Africa. And because you work for Facebook, you know, one of the things that that are exciting about the social media space is that governments in Africa are increasingly getting interested in regulating social media. It could be because of some fears or because of some challenges that it has. Would you like maybe briefly for our audience to explain some of the fears that you think government may have and how, as a social media company, you have tried to address some of these within the space of policy and governance space?
Thank you so much, Verengai, for having me. And thank you, audience, for being patient with us, even with the late start. So as Facebook is a company that operates in the social media space, and the mission of Facebook really is to give people the power to build community and to bring the world closer together. What that means is that we recognize that the internet is a very powerful tool that helps people provide social and economic empowerment, and tools such as ours, a platform such as Facebook, provides that as well. We have seen, I think we've had many presentations in the sessions that we've had since yesterday, and discussions around what the benefits of internet are, what are the challenges maybe that other countries that have shared their experience have gone through and what they're contending with. So to speak directly to your question, I think from what I have seen, even in my role now within this region, that the concerns for government tend to be around some of the issues we're already tackling, and the issues we continue to improve and try to tackle even better. One of them is harmful content, and I think it is the case even here in Ethiopia, where you have certain users online that may create content that is likely to cause harm to others. And so as a company, we recognize that one of the things that we do or provide in terms of the tool is a platform that allows for everyone to be able to express themselves, to give everybody a voice, not just the people who ordinarily would have access to, say, media, traditional media, for instance, like news houses or media houses or print, for example, newspapers and so on, but to give anyone and everyone a platform where they can express themselves, for example, and express their views on issues they care for. But we recognize that in allowing that kind of freedom of expression to the extent that is possible, we also have to worry or concern ourselves with the safety of other people while interacting with that kind of content. And so for governments, the question of harmful content is one that we already as a company have made a lot of strides to be able to address and deal with. And we recognize that there are instances where some of the content being shared online may result in offline harm, and that concerns us greatly. And it's the reason why, as a company, we have a very solid set of policies that we call the community standards, which basically provides you with the rules of how to conduct yourself or behave when you're interacting with our platforms. When I talk about platforms for Facebook, I mean platforms, not just Facebook, the platform that most people know, but also Messenger, WhatsApp, as well as Instagram, which are all part of the family of apps. So our community standards are important because they help each user, and all of them are accessible. All the community standards, basically the rules of what to do or not do on our platform, are accessible to everybody that has an account on our platform. And they help people understand or know what they're allowed to do or not do. And those are the rules that we use as well to determine or moderate content on our platform. When I say moderate content, I mean when a post is reported. So for example, if a user comes across content that they see to be harmful, they need to report it. And the reporting function is available against each and every post that we have on Facebook, for example. So you can be able, whether you see a picture or a video or a piece of content that has been texted out by somebody that seems to be causing or likely to cause harm, is either cyberbullying or is threatening to hurt somebody else, or is attacking someone on the basis of their protected characteristics like your nationality. You know, a post, for example, saying Ethiopians are not better than Kenyans, for example. I'm just giving a random example. That is something that is obviously attacking people on the basis of nationality. There are very clear policies on what we would do in such an instance. Content that also attacks people on the basis of gender or your sexuality and so on and so forth, we have very clear policies around how to handle those things. So for us as Facebook, we have made sure that we progressively review these community standards as well, which are the rules, like I said, that govern how people behave themselves on our platform, to make sure that at all times we are making sure that the local context and nuance is taken into consideration when decisions like those are taken. Why? Is because we've realized, whilst we want to have these standards as global, there are very many variations when it comes to local context on the ground. And some of the steps that, excuse me, that Facebook has taken in making sure that this happens is we consult widely, not just internally, where we have a group of experts drawn from different disciplines to be able to write these policies, but also we consult very widely with external organizations that are involved in these spaces that touch on the issues that we're seeing online. We consult very widely also with external experts. For example, if it's an issue like online safety, we have online safety experts that we link with all the time to check whether our rules and policies that we're writing are reflective of the issues that we see on the ground. In addition to that, and these experts are drawn from everywhere in the world, so it's not just the US or UK or any of the markets where we have offices, for instance. My role, for example, here as a regional lead for Facebook is to identify some of those organizations, which is part of why my visits around the region are constant and all the time. I'm in Ethiopia maybe every other week, for example, to identify organizations we can work with, to sit with them and explain to them what we're looking for, to also listen to them and understand what are the issues that you have on the ground in Ethiopia relating to the use of Facebook, for instance. So we are trying as much as an organization to keep close, to listen, to be as dynamic as possible, to make sure that the rules that we write that determine how people conduct themselves online are as relevant as possible to the current situation on the ground. That said, we also, to answer again the question in regards to what other concerns I see, we have other areas, for example, where government will be concerned about, say, issues of data portability as a concern. You're using data that belongs to our citizens, for example, and it's maybe being used by an organization that is outside of the country. That is something we hear very regularly. And one of the things that we have, you've even had our founder and CEO say in very recent past actually, is that Facebook is actually open to having regulation, particularly in certain areas where we have seen these concerns arise over and over, and where as a company we do not want to be the sole or single source of truth or decision making on certain matters of great importance. For example, civic engagement processes like elections are a critical milestone for any country. And so it's important that areas such as election have very clear, I'd say, policies or regulatory framework around how those issues are managed, and we'll be able to abide by those. Issues like data portability, which is what I was touching on right now, and then also having clear definitions around what is the data we want portable or which ones shouldn't be. And I think the definitions also will be like a detailed engagement across to agree on what exactly do we mean by data that ought to be kept within a market or can be used across markets. And I think those nuances also need to be discussed in very clear conversations and may necessarily actually need to have the cooperation of different countries to be able to agree, because then they need to apply globally to countries that are, to organizations that are operating across borders. The question of harmful content, like I've just touched on, is also another that we do not want to have to make a decision on something like that all on our own. I've given examples of some of the things we're doing as an organization or company to address harmful content, but we would love for there to be like some clarity with governments in regards to how harmful content is being managed. To maybe again now just summarize in terms of the questions, as an organization we are not waiting for regulation to come. We constantly are self-regulating and looking to see what is it that we can do and do better to make sure that the experience of our users on our platforms is maximized and is an experience that is enjoyable. And that then if we see concerns, how do we make sure that we have very quick mitigation measures to get the information from the ground on what is going wrong, when it is going wrong, what is going right so that we can do more of that, and to be able to address these issues as quickly as they come up. So that is what I think I'd say in my initial comments, and I'd be more than happy to interact more on the topics.
Thank you very much, Mr. for those remarks, which I think are very critical when we get to think about what we believe is a good internet, a better internet for Ethiopia. And maybe I'll also give Alice the opportunity to quickly get us into this discussion of...
Oh, mine is not going to be quick.
Okay. Yours is not going to be quick, yes.
Oh, yes. I would like to do something different. I think you're all very quiet. I think the first question I want to ask is, how many of you use Firefox as a browser? That's impressive. Great, thank you. So you probably know what Mozilla is. Mozilla is the owner of the Firefox browser that's used by hundreds and millions of people. And Mozilla is different. We put people first, and because of that, the first thing I'm going to ask, the question that I was asked to respond to, I'm going to ask you to respond to instead. So Mozilla, for the longest time, has been demanding for a healthier internet, an internet that works for the people. And, oh yeah, we are a global community of technologists, thinkers, and builders working together to keep the internet alive and accessible. We believe that the internet is a global resource, open and accessible to all. So just that in itself is enough to tell you what Mozilla's philosophy and our own manifesto in terms of putting people first. So I was asked to respond to these 3 questions, but I want to throw them back to all of you. I would like to hear from all of you in terms of, especially within the Ethiopian context. So we've been demanding for a better internet. Why have we been demanding for a better internet? Because I think you all heard yesterday when it was created, it was meant to be an open global resource with permissionless innovation where everybody could contribute, and the idea was that it would bring about development, it would bring about change. But what we've seen has been completely different. We've seen, as you know, Mercy is talking about hate speech there and disinformation. We've seen it being used sometimes by government to criminalize, activities, civil activities. We've seen sometimes it being used by the private sector to surveil you and sell products back to you. So that's the reason why Mozilla has been demanding for a better internet. So I want to hear from you, what does it mean if you had a plane, we're just beginning from the beginning. This is Ethiopia. I want to hear from all of you in terms of what does a good internet for Ethiopia mean to you? What should you be demanding the internet to do for Ethiopia? So I'm going to get everyone to talk. Yes.
Fast and real.
An internet that changed people's life. For instance, previously, someone intervened from Gondar University and said, they have good internet connection at the university, but there is nothing that has changed in a student's life, in creating jobs or any other things. So, if we develop internet, it has to bring some changes in people's life, like creating jobs, creating a better lives for Ethiopians.
So empowering people, creating permissionless innovation that allows for entrepreneurship and job creation. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I think this can also be for the second question you asked, but I think it should cater to differently abled people as well, so improving the ease of accessibility so that everyone is involved and I wouldn't have to speak for someone who's different to me, they can speak for themselves.
Inclusive, yes.
For me, internet should be available at all time before everything, especially in a country like Ethiopia where there are many shutdowns. Before talking about a better internet, I should talk about available internet. So it should be available.
Okay, available, accessible, affordable.
Yeah, affordable.
Universally accessible across the country, right?
For example,
for Ethiopia.
In Ethiopia, the internet penetration, as you've said, is not like more than 15%, and it's only congested in the capital. If you go out of Addis, you will see the difference. Even the data network is very poor, the broadband as well. Even if in terms of number, in terms of megabytes, you see the numbers, but it's not available. And it's also compromised as well. So for me, a better internet should be an available internet.
Okay.
At least for those who can afford, should use it. But it's not happening.
So affordable, yes, affordable there.
Thank you. I think Ethiopia needs a better internet for us to develop our, our collective. We are a collective society. We're good at social life, and we can make it better even in the internet, this social life, so that we can connect to the world. We're somehow closed society, so internet can help us compete with the world. And if it is accessible, like you said, should be accessible to our farmers in the rural remote areas, which is not a big deal these days to make accessible for them, so that they can sell and they can know the current and current updated market price, so that they can sell their products in a better price. So we need more. We're 100 million plus, but I don't have the data now how these people are accessing these internet services. We need companies like you more here. But what she said is striking me. We have to balance, the profit and the public demand need. It's not only, we should not focus only on what we want or people want, but what they need too. So this should come from elites, I think, and from the government especially. Thank you.
Most of the points were they discussed and regarding giving and improving our day-to-day life. So, like, internet is more than for most of us, we require in order to improve our day-to-day life, getting information and things like that. So I don't have anything to add other than the points discussed.
I think it should be reliable, safe, secure services. So the ability to make payments, the information is accurate. There's cybersecurity laws. So for me, it's about making those services safe and secure.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Normally what I want to be internet for Ethiopia is to be basically should have to be a platform which can harvest a knowledge from the world, basically. And the other one is to be a platform which can use to express our societal culture, something like that. So most of the things what we have to should have to be to me says to be that a platform that can used for growth, basically through exploring the world knowledge. That's what I want to be.
Okay.
Better information and better communication.
So I'm assuming for both of you, perhaps that would result to, it's more local relevant content, information that is relevant. Okay. So local relevant content. Yes, please.
I think better internet is, for me, better infrastructure.
Okay.
As we have learned yesterday, in one of yesterday's session, that internet is a network of networks, and it presents different challenges. So one of the presenters proposed that different newly emerged technologies, for instance, nano and AI, will a solution for the challenges that internet presents for Ethiopia and African countries. So I think better internet is, for me, better infrastructure and newly advanced technologies that might be a solution for the problem that internet presents the different kind of challenges. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Internet may be foster for infrastructures, and also internet creates jobs for especially the young generation, and that's the source for the young generation and getting information for the young generation. For me, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I guess for me, a better internet should be a medium that respects individual and the collective values, which in a way will be expressed in this list of requirements or things we demand.
Thank you.
I can say that it's a better internet if we are able to harness opportunities provided by the platform. Otherwise, I can say that it's better
Okay.
Okay, for me, I want this internet to be open, like a freedom of speech, not like a freedom of a free beer. And the second thing is I expect a privacy, even if it is open, to keep the privacy.
Yes.
The third thing which I expect from internet is diversity. Not someone dominate, rather all cultures, religious, everything should have to be diversity, information, knowledge should have to be exposed.
Okay.
It should be for everyone, and more specifically, always on.
Okay, thank you. Already it is said, but I wanted to add something for this session. Improving the social interaction, if the better internet or if the quality and the proximity of internet is available, it improves the social quality of the people.
Yes. Last one.
A better internet is also an internet that is not used to spread hate. And in Ethiopia, it has caused a lot of harm due to online hate spreads through internet. So I think a better internet is an internet that will not cause any offline harm.
Me too. A better internet for Ethiopia. I would love it to be, I think I'm going to repeat some of the things that have been said there. Open, everywhere. One time I was in Baada, and I think it's an interesting place, and I would really love the internet to be everywhere and, you know, also secure.
I'd say a better internet for Ethiopia. Having worked very closely with the people of Ethiopia, I have been to Hawassa, Mekele, Adama, on the ground, talking to people to try and understand this issue. And the same concerns there are here in this room are the same concerns on the ground, but even more importantly, everyone really just wants a better internet that helps to unify the country. And I think it touches to the point he's making about there not being hatefulness online, but people using this to bring, to embrace the diversity that there is in Ethiopia, that all people from different regions can be one people, can enjoy and be proud about being Ethiopian, and can be able to share and learn new information with people online. And it is the hope and aspiration for Facebook that is exactly what we'll be able to achieve for Ethiopia as well. But secondly, I think it's also important that a better internet for Ethiopia be an internet that also empowers people to be able to do great things in Ethiopia. We have seen from experience, even myself with a friend who was laid off one day from a bank she was working at, suddenly having no job, still having the same bills to pay and things like that to do. Suddenly starting a very simple concept online of sharing tips on how to cook different Kenyan dishes, for example, which grew into a huge community that now has hundreds of thousands of followers that all come in there to share ideas about how to cook Kenyan meals. And so what she gets now is a lot of companies coming to her to say, why don't you promote our utensils that are being sold that we want to introduce in Kenya? Why don't you promote seasonings or, you know, this type of salt and so on? You know, things that advertisers are coming to her page to ask for, and she gets money out of that. So the use of the internet and social media platforms to empower oneself and to build communities that actually enrich or empower you to do better of yourself or to live a better life, I think is something that I really would want to be the way that internet is used in Ethiopia as well. And obviously, the question of availability, affordability is important, and that everybody, the very important question that she raised on accessibility. Today with technology, unlike in the past where a newspaper could only be read to someone who's blind or who is maybe without arms, now with technology you're able to have options that can, for example, play back audio. You know, everybody can be able to participate and engage. And that for me is a beautiful thing with technology. And so I think the question of having it available and accessible to everybody is a really critical one for Ethiopia, as is the case with everywhere else. Yeah.
What a great list of suggestions. You know what really strikes me here? How much we have in common. Yeah? I could sit in London or in Brussels or anywhere else really, and I'd get a list that looks very much like this. And I believe in all of it. Let me draw out two themes here that really resonate for me. Yeah, that I think that draw some of these things together in a way that I see as being what I want for an internet for my world. Yeah. One is that there's a whole set of things here that have been said about access and availability and the services and something that will really change people's lives. And whether it's at the infrastructure level or whether it's at the service level, it's all about what will it actually do and can I use it? And also the inclusivity side as well. And for me, that's about empowering people that can deliver, because I don't know what those things are going to be. I don't know what they're going to be in the future. If I did, I'd be a rich man. I'd be Mr. Zuckerberg. I'm not. But what I want is the next Mr. Zuckerberg to be able to come along. And the next person who's going to solve and come with new ideas that will delight in all of those areas. And so the first thing that I would want is really to preserve the idea and to create the idea of what economists call contestability. The idea that anyone can come along with something that delivers something in one of those areas and they will be able to bring it and to add it to the party. Yeah, that's the first thing that I think is the big thing you want. The other one is there's a very big theme that here in the balance between concerns about bad content, illegal content, harmful content, hate, on the one hand, and concerns about protecting freedom of expression and openness and the ability to have debate and discussion on the other. And that's a really big one. And that's a debate that's being had everywhere. And what I want for that more than anything, because it's always a challenging one, what I want in that is I want a system for resolving disputes and complaints and instances of potentially this is outside what should be allowed, and potentially it isn't. Somebody wants to stop it, somebody else thinks no, this should be allowed. I want a system that can resolve that we can all have confidence in, that we can have confidence that actually gives a fair hearing to the public interest in suppressing bad content, and also a fair hearing to the individual interest in protecting people's ability to speak and to dissent. And if it's a system that works, it's a system that has the process that we can feel that balance those things fairly. If we can achieve that, then we will really achieve something for the internet that I think would be really worth aiming for.
Thank you very much, all of you. We can go to the next slide, Victor. So you'll see what are the characteristics of a better internet for Ethiopia. I think we've already discussed that, and we can take some of those points and actually dump them there. The last one is where should be the focus. But before we look at where we should be focusing on, and I think most of you have already started, like Mercy has told you about, entrepreneurship and using, the internet to create entrepreneurship opportunities for yourself at that individual level and for your community. And then, Malcolm here has mentioned the next Mark Zuckerberg, he or she, actually I hope it's a she, might come from Ethiopia. So, because we've been seeing it's dominated, this field is dominated too much by men, and I think it's important that we consider gender equality as an issue as we go forward. But before we go there, I wanted to quickly mention that what Mozilla has done is taken all of these issues and put them in 5 buckets, and it's really great to see all of them having been mentioned. For example, one of the big things, because Mozilla as itself, the Firefox is an open source, web browser, and we actually advocate for open source applications and open source solutions, is open innovation, so that what is worrying Mozilla, and the reason why we are demanding for the better of the internet, is that we are seeing it closing. For example, when it comes to copyright, this time I'm not going to blame Facebook. Copyright, for example, where you cannot access information, you cannot access knowledge or use it because it's copyrighted, essentially meaning that it's closed. So advocating for open innovation, that anyone can publish or invent online without asking for permission, and that the technologies are transparent enough in a language that you understand, that you're able to contribute. So it'll be really great to see, like Amharic like populating a lot of what we have, the information that we have, or Kiswahili for that matter. I think inclusive, and we talked about, I think nobody really raised the issue of language as a barrier. And considering that 52% of websites are in English, and only 25% of the world speaks or understands English. So I think we have a huge problem there, and that's what Mozilla is asking for. And one of the projects is actually called Common Voice, is to have some African languages, translated or used by a lot of the new technologies that we're seeing, and that you're able to not just understand African languages, but also understand our accents. We all don't have that English accent, and we don't need to. We all don't have that American accent, and we really don't need to. In fact, we don't need to speak any colonial language. We should be able to speak our own local languages. And then decentralization, meaning that, the internet should be controlled by many. And what we're seeing right now, and the Internet Society has put out a paper around that, is, we're seeing other than the decentralization, and we're seeing that played in so many spaces, including digital ID. So, meaning that, it should be controlled by all of us, and, the millions of devices linked together in an open network, not a closed network. And then the issue of safety and security of the internet, that's the fourth and fifth bucket. It impacts all of us. And one person mentioned that, safety and security is important, but also we need our own privacy protected as well. So we are seeing, a lot of discussions about, we are going to access your data, but how are you going to really protect my data? We need to make sure that those discussions go hand in hand. So I would like, and then most important, and for especially the African region, is digital literacy. The reason why a lot of we don't have our languages, we don't have our own local content, the internet was not made for us, is because not most of us are digitally literate. And I don't mean, that, you can open a browser and work with it. I mean that we should be able to appropriate and control the internet as well. We should have the opportunity to do that. And so it's extremely important to be able to have those digital literacy skills so that we can, create a new Facebook, or to create, apps, or be able to participate, not just in not just being sold to, but we can be able to determine the direction that the internet goes for the next couple of years, and not just in Ethiopia, but globally as well. So, and that's why Mozilla has been demanding for a better internet. So when we look at demanding for a better internet, where should we focus? And I think I'll probably leave Verengai to moderate that as a broader discussion, because it's not just for my questions. I think it impacts all of us. Is for governance, where should we be focusing on? And I might start with my own examples. I think if you go to the last slide, the example was Kenya, but I don't have any notes on that. He'd asked me to actually share my experiences in Kenya in terms of where we focused in determining where, let me call it, the Kenyan internet went, or in terms, especially in terms of governance. We came together as the Kenya ICT Action Network and brought in all the actors, the private sector, civil society, the media, and everybody else, because we had one enemy, our government. Because then our government actually really used to put out there and say, if you're accessing, it's illegal to access the internet. We literally had that in the 90s. So if you access the internet, you could get arrested. And so it's because we all felt we had one enemy. We all came together fighting to make sure, but we didn't fight. We were not confrontational with the government. We were actually literally asking the government, create a conducive policy and regulatory environment for us to be able to do business, to interact. Not enough public participation. And one of them is the digital ID, for example. And that ended up actually being stopped from being implemented because the Kenyan government had not involved Kenyan citizens and the public in determining how digital ID was going to be implemented. So we were looking at it at all levels, and also at the global level. we went even further at the global level, taking the lessons we learned at the World Summit on the Information Society, the lessons we were learning at the United Nations, the Internet Corporations for Sign Names and Numbers, and the multi-stakeholder model, and bringing them back to the national level and ensuring that they were part and parcel of what was going on at the national level. So to a point where now, a lot of governments tend to look at civil society organizations and say, well, you're all being funded by others, but the civil society in Kenya is empowered in a way and emboldened in a way that they can take government to court. You don't necessarily need that donor funding to say, well, this is not right. We were not involved in this decision. And so that's why the Kenyan, example is so different, but also the first CEO of Safaricom called us peculiar. We are also very peculiar. So a lot of the things we do may not really necessarily be, replicated at every country. So it's important that for Ethiopia, you can take the lessons and determine for yourselves how they will work for you, because your government is different, the systems are different, and the times are different. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice, for that, and for initiating this conversation. I think it was a great opportunity for colleagues to also share some views on what they think could be a better internet for Ethiopia. I'm looking at our time, but most importantly, we are going to continue this discussion after lunch. So before we break for lunch, I want to give colleagues an opportunity. If you have a burning question or comment that you want to make while the colleagues are still up here, they are going to be with us again in the afternoon session, because that's when we are going to frame this discussion into the 3 or 4 things that we can focus on. So I think that is very important, and please don't miss the afternoon discussion. Is very important, and it's for you. This is the Ethiopian Development Conference. So we need to make those recommendations, and I think our points have to be strong. So I'm giving yet another opportunity. If you have a quick question or comment for Malcolm, for Alice, for Messi, please. I think we can take about 3 to 5 minutes, because I think we are already off. So if you make it very quickly.
Great. My question is for Messi with regards to Facebook and online safety. What has been the progress in terms of getting content moderators who are locally based? That's a really important question, because context gets lost, whether it's AI moderation or someone who doesn't live in that country. So for example, in a case of South Africa, when you talk about minority rights, that's quite offensive, hey? Yet from an external point of view, someone who's moderating a conversation says, oh, this person is a minority and therefore they protect them. So we are seeing that women's voices are shrinking. There's a space that's shrinking for women's voices, and especially black empowerment conversations online, because of this moderation that is just really out of context. So I'm just really curious in terms of, Africa is a growing market for Facebook. Is there an effort to really bring these jobs in the countries where the moderation needs to take place?
Hold on, Miss. Anyone else?
My question is very direct. How can you cooperate with Ethiopian government regulation aspect? As you know, the role of internet and even particularly Facebook is becoming huge, and most of the Ethiopians are Facebook Facebook users. How can you support Ethiopian government in regulation aspect? Hate speech, and what kinds of detrimental activities are held? So how can you help Ethiopian government in this aspect?
Is there another one? Oh, this is the last. Okay.
Okay, mine is directed to Alice as well. Is there any private regulatory body that formulates in Kenyan experience? It's my first question. And when you associate the regulation that you mentioned as personal data protection, are you associating the personal data protection with that of public sector data protection, or you formulate such kind of regulation as without any difference? Thank you.
Okay,
Mine is not a question, it's a clarification for LINX. LINX, is it on your side? I said, when you say members, are they ISPs or what are your members? Are they individuals or corporate ISPs? And then, is it a data center, your LINX, is it a big data center that serves the ISPs, or you have your own private network that members should use your network? The third one on your site, it says it's a non-profitable organization. How do you survive?
Thank you. I thank you for your presentation first. And I have a question for, I didn't catch your name, sorry. Okay. What do you do to strike a balance between private data protection on the other hand and government regulation on the other? She said about, actually you two can answer it. You were lobbying the government on this area. So what was your experience? If you have any protection, one of the participants raised about data protection. That's why I'm raising this. And for Malcolm, I think, I have a problem with British accent. Anyways, what do you expect if you're involving in this business in Ethiopia, if you are planning? What do you think is your big challenge here?
Okay, guys, I'll give you a few minutes just to quickly address these issues. And if they are not well addressed, we can, of course, continue this discussion after lunch. So please, colleagues, remember, after lunch, we are coming back in here. So remember to come back quickly. Malcolm?
Okay, thank you. I got some factual questions here that were posed to me that I can run through quite quickly because they're simply factual. The LINX membership is made up of the network operators. Anyone that runs an autonomous internet network can join LINX. So they can be internet access providers, they can be content providers like Facebook. Facebook is a member of LINX. They can be technical organizations, content delivery networks and other infrastructure bodies. Anyone that runs and controls their own network rather than just buying it off someone else can join LINX and then interconnect with other network operators doing the same thing. That's who the members are. We don't actually own our own buildings, the data centers. We operate facilities within multiple data centers connected together so that people can be in one building, join us, and connect to other people's in another data center in London and exchange traffic between those networks. But we're not a building operator ourselves. We are the technical platform, the switch. Unprofitable. I'm glad to say we're not unprofitable. We are not for profit. What that means is when we make money, we don't, like a commercial business, hand that money to shareholders. Instead, we use that money to reinvest in the growth of LINX, and anything that's not needed for that, we cut prices so that we stop making more money, and so that we reduce the level of profit so that we don't accumulate undue surpluses. Okay? But not-for-profit means not distributing money to shareholders. You can still actually make a surplus, and we invest it. The questions around the regulatory structure in the UK, There is an independent regulator for the telecoms sector that includes the internet industry. It's called Ofcom, which stands for the Office of Communications. That deals with sector-specific telecoms regulation. It doesn't include data protection. There is a separate data protection authority that regulates business generally. Ofcom does have responsibilities for regulating the telecom sector, including the internet industry, for cyber security matters within its mandate. But we're also answerable to general law for other purposes. The one big open question is the things about illegal content and harmful content and so forth. Does Ofcom have the responsibility for regulating harmful content? And the answer is, at the moment, no. That is currently out for review. The government has plans to introduce that. They are discussing them. This is a highly controversial and sensitive subject in the UK, whether it should have those powers, and if so, what they should be. So that's very much a live issue. Very much the sense, we don't have all the answers. We are still working these things out amongst ourselves. Want to make sure that I haven't missed anything. Oh yeah, the other data protection question was about, is data protection in the UK the same or the different for the public sector? And the answer is there is a common data protection framework that applies to both, but there are certain elements of it that apply specifically to public sector organisations. But it's within one general data protection framework under a single data protection authority that regulates both public and private sector entities.
Good, yeah. Now, to the questions. I think I really am glad that you guys are asking these questions, because then I can be able to share a lot more about what we do as an organization. To your question regarding whether we have local representation or how do we take care of the local context, you give the example of minority rights. There's a couple of ways in which we do this. And before I even go any further, to let you know that we are not where we would love to be. We're still improving. Every day as we learn, like I said, we're a very dynamic organization. We are open to hearing more suggestions on what more we could do to make sure that we take care of this perspective. But let me just tell you what we're doing at the moment. So to start with, I think I'll give the example of, in the last 1 year, for example, the Africa Public Policy team only had maybe 2 or 3 people that were working in Africa, covering all of the 54 countries at Facebook. Now we have a much larger team of people, and I'm talking about the team that is in country, based in the countries on the ground, to have a lot of closeness to the stakeholders that we deal with every day. Our stakeholders being government, users of our platforms, civil society organizations, media partner organizations, civil society organizations, and others, all of whom we constantly are in touch with to make sure that we listen and hear what they're talking to us about, what their concerns are, what they think we're doing well. And also we come back to them when we want to test something we want to bring out to the market. That would this work? What is the issue here? What do you think? So already with the regional presence that we have in terms of the staff that directly are employed by Facebook, we have a lot of closeness to the issues on the ground, because the people are not hired. It will not be, for example, assuming Malcolm was an expert on African matters. The fact that he is a British man living in London would not qualify, for example, to work at Facebook policy team for African issues, because we want African people that are from the region, that understand the issues, they feel with the same passion and emotion as yourself, because they come from that market, to be able to articulate on behalf of the market back onto the business. So that is one. So I'd say there is a huge improvement, and we continue to hire in that respect to make sure that as much as possible we have presence. That said, it doesn't mean that we will ever be able to hire in each and every country, because obviously it's got to make sense in terms of cost efficiency and everything. And our business model is such that as long as you have presence very close by to the market. So for example, myself, I'm not from Ethiopia, but I'm from Kenya. I have a closeness to Ethiopia from the fact that I am a neighbor to Ethiopia. I'm able to cover for Ethiopia, for instance. But that does not also mean that we do not have Ethiopians working at Facebook, because I think that is the other question I've had even in other forums being asked. We have many Ethiopians that work for Facebook that are in different teams. So I'm giving specifically an example of regional teams based in the region. So I don't sit in an office in London or Dublin or the US. I am actually based here in the region. So that is one way. The second thing is when it comes to content moderation, which is where I needed to draw the difference, we have a huge team of people. For that, we hire people from the specific language coverage that we want to cover. So for example, Amharic is one of the languages spoken in Ethiopia. Xhosa, for example, is one of the languages spoken in South Africa. We will hire somebody that is from that market that speaks the language when we are moderating content that's in Xhosa or that is in Amharic. So we do have Amharic speakers who are Ethiopians that work for Facebook that do content moderation. And that is to not just, for example, in our Dublin office where a lot of the content moderation is done, but also here in Nairobi. In Nairobi, if I don't know that you followed the news when Facebook launched in partnership with an organization called Summersource, a content review center in Nairobi. That content review center has employed over 100 people drawn from different languages within Africa. So there's representation of Hausa from Nigeria, Amharic, Oromo. All of these languages have people sitting in our content review center in Nairobi that do the content moderation. When I speak about content moderation, why I also need to clarify what that means. I am talking about posts that people have reported as they're using our platform. So we have about 2.5 billion users, for example, on Facebook across the world. We have maybe about 100 and, I don't want to confuse the numbers, but over 100 million plus who are within Africa, for example. Now, when people see a post that they do not like or are concerned about, they will click on reporting it to Facebook. When that post is reported to Facebook, assuming the person that posted it, posted in Amharic, for instance, that content will be channeled directly to the market reviewer for Amharic language. So content moderation in regards to a language, we have capacity in terms of people who are from the region that speak the language itself. So that's another way, which means that this is a person who, again, is from the market, and when I say market, I mean the country, understands the issues of that country. If they're from South Africa, they understand the concerns of South Africans, they are from the market, similar to yourself. So when they hear minority rights, they're not guessing, oh, what does minority rights mean? They immediately know what the issue around that is. The other thing is, we have a lot of partners that we work with, organizations that are in civil society space. To me, assuming an issue is escalated, and for a content reviewer sitting in our offices to look at, and they look at it and they're not sure, and they're looking at it against our community standards, which I mentioned earlier are also very extensively, there's a lot of consultation in developing those, so both on the ground as well as internally. And so if they've looked at the piece of content that is being reported and they are not sure what decision to take, for example, do I remove this? Does this mean what it really is saying? So for example, a word like settler in Ethiopia triggers people a certain way. When you hear people being referred to as settlers, it already makes people feel, why are they calling us settlers? A word like tall trees in Rwanda, at the time when, just before the genocide, when they would announce and say, let's cut down tall trees, somebody who's not from Rwanda would just be, oh, they're just talking about trees. But it actually was an attack on a community saying, let's kill them. That's assuming somebody who is actually moderating that content is not certain as to what that really means. We fall back to the third level of escalation, which is our partners on the ground. Now, our partners on the ground are sourced by ourselves, again, the regional leads who are on the ground. So I have to do a whole lot of due diligence and vetting on an organization to see, is this an organization that truly is involved in issues to do with peace and conflict, whether it is a topic on online safety, cyberbullying, or whatever issue. Is this organization really a champion in these matters? If they are, then I will get them onboarded to what we call our Trusted Partner Program, which means that they become one of the referral points for checking our sense on how we moderate a piece of content. So this third level is again for that purpose. So we'll again escalate now to this third level to say, what does this sound to you? Is this a serious thing? Should we worry? Does this actually violate one of our community standards? Because they've been trained, they will be able to quickly tell us, that is a very serious thing, take it down. It is talking about killing of Tutsis, or, it's talking about Amharas and this and that. So then we are able to action based on that and other level of escalation. So in regards to making sure that we have the local context and nuance taken care of, we do that. When it comes to, and that is now in relation to content moderation, there is something else we call third-party fact check, call themselves fact checkers, again, that go through a long, elaborate process of making sure that content that is online is factual. And this is a huge area because it touches on misinformation and disinformation, for example. Assuming today someone said, Mercy has been appointed as the ambassador of Kenya to Ethiopia, and it is not true. It will sound true to some people because they'll be like, oh, she actually does go to Ethiopia a lot, maybe she actually has become. But then a third-party fact-checking organization will go through the process of checking with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Kenya to say, is it true that Mercy has been appointed as a diplomat for Kenya to Ethiopia? And then when they get the feedback, they're able to say, this is actually not a true story, take it down. And so we will action based on that verification. So there's many levels and layers that we make sure that this information is checked and verified for us to be able to action. So in a long way is to say, again, like he has alluded to, like Malcolm said, when it comes to issues of disinformation and misinformation, and also hate speech and harmful content online, every day we are striving hard and putting a lot of investment to making sure that we get to the right levels of keeping the platform safe from having such content. However, there is still very low reporting, unfortunately, from people, because unless someone brings it to our attention, we don't know it exists as a problem. So, for example, people will ask us, why does Facebook leave this content? I get that a lot in Ethiopia, where people ask this question. Why does Facebook keep this content up? And they know it's very bad. We don't actually know that it is bad because we've not seen the content. We're not hovering. Remember, there's data privacy and protection laws in place. We're not hovering into post accounts looking into information. Somebody needs to report it. When you see a piece of content, please click on those buttons, the button right next to each post, and say, report this to Facebook. When you do, then somebody in Facebook is brought to their attention, and now they can be able to action. So that's like my long way. It is a whole lecture I would give. But let me summarize with the next question, I think, because we're out of time.
I think we can
discuss in the afternoon? Okay.
In the afternoon. Do you have a comment, Alice, on some of the issues?
Oh yeah, yes. Kenya has a data protection. Has a data protection law, but not a data protection authority yet. Kenya also has a regulatory authority that was created in 1998 when we actually had our Kenya Communications and Information legislation drafted. That created the Communications Commission of Kenya. I served on it for 6 years, but it's now called the Communication Authority. And then perhaps we can discuss data protection in the afternoon because it's a bigger topic that needs a little bit more discussion.
Thank you, Mercy and Alice. And certainly, guys, you see, the issues are actually getting even more heated, so we definitely need to continue this discussion in the afternoon. So I'm hoping that my three colleagues will be here in the afternoon to continue this discussion. We are way behind time, so guys, let's break for lunch. If there are any ICT colleagues from the regions, we are being asked to join other colleagues in Jacaranda room. So please go there for a quick meeting and lunch in that same place that's happening there. It looks like we only have about 35 minutes for lunch. So I hope we can have a quick lunch and then we can come back and continue the discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alice, Malcolm, and Mercy for an exciting discussion.